Welcome to the Magnificast. Dean is still on vacation, so this week I'm here with my friend Zach Dimiele. Zach is he has an MDiv from Duke University. He has ordination plans, and he's an all-around very cool and knowledgeable person about church history and theology. So because I have such a theologically oriented person with me, we're going to talk over Leonardo Boff's Ecclesiogenesis. Before we get started, though, let me quickly remind everyone that the Magnificast Virilio reading group is starting next week on July 11th. So if you haven't, you can get signed up on our Patreon account. All you have to do is just donate $1 and you get into the reading group. It's just that simple, and you can get all the. We'll send you some PDFs. You'll get in the reading group. It'll be a good time. We're gonna start like we do every week and just catch up with one another. All right, Zach, what did you do this week?
Well, as you know, I'm moving to New Haven, Connecticut soon because my wife got into Yale's PhD program in theological ethics. So I spent most of the week that I wasn't working arranging moving things. So getting movers, reserving hotel rooms for our drive there. This is a lot of fun. It's not a lot of fun, really.
It's not really, though.
No. It's the I guess what's the opposite of fun?
Sorrow.
Yeah, it was sorrow.
Yeah.
I just engaged in quite a lot of intentional sorrow this week, I guess. Yeah.
Well, okay. I've been getting ready for the summer class that I'm teaching.
Oh, what was class on?
It's just like the 101 Media Studies comm class.
Okay.
Yeah, we're reading this really rad book by Michelle Serra called Thumbelina.
Oh, Michael Serra. I didn't know he was
No. Michelle Serra.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's wow. The audience is going to love that joke.
Yeah, I've really tapped into there's an untapped Michael Serra joke market.
No one's making them.
Yeah. No one is.
Michael Serra shows up in the new Twin Peaks. And he is like the funniest character in the entire show.
Oh man, I haven't seen the old Twin Peaks.
Dean hasn't seen it either,
oh.
And that's okay. I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
But Michael Cera shows up in the new Twin Peaks. This isn't really a spoiler alert, but he's like he's
robot ninja psycho.
No, but better than that though. He's like the child of these other beloved characters, and he is a like motorcycle driving poet, and he has like a lisp, and it's very funny. It's all very good.
Yeah,
New Twin
speech
Peaks
impediments are just comedic gold.
I know, I love it.
Yeah,
love them. Cool, man. Well, this week, as promised, is about Leonardo Boff's Ecclesiogenesis. I'm 100% certain that Dean is going to be mad that he's like not here for this conversation because I know that he likes it. I feel like that we've talked about that before in private, not on the podcast. So we'll probably have to like circle back around to this some other time when Dean's here. But
he'll have to correct us as well because it's two Protestants talking about Catholic theology, so we're bound to screw up.
100% wrong from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I think. But anyways, we're gonna do it. So Zach is a person who has been to divinity school. How about that?
How about it?
You've written about church hierarchy and church organization before. I saw you do a paper on it, so I know that that's real.
Yeah, you didn't imagine that. I really did that.
It really happened.
It did.
In which my pastor was in the room and he was nonplussed.
Yeah, not a lot of pastors were lacking in the plus.
Yeah, I know. They thought you were trying to kick them out.
Yeah, I mean, not that I wasn't, but you know.
I just remember the look on his face after the presentation. He was like, he just asked a clarifying question. So what you're saying is like that the church shouldn't really have a hierarchy? And you're like, yeah. He said, okay. Like he was kind of mad about it, but he didn't really want to make a scene.
Yeah. Well, I know him rather well, and he kind of likes hierarchy.
Yeah.
Leonardo Boff doesn't hate hierarchy either, so, it's not an unpopular opinion to have.
I mean, hierarchy has its places for sure. So Leonardo Boff is cool, and this book, Ecclesiogenesis, is also cool because there's lots of crisscrossing of streams in terms of like a Ghostbusters kind of streams. No. But I mean, it's like, lots of crisscrossing currents.
Yeah, I don't know. What year did Ghostbusters come out?
I think this is pre-Ghostbusters.
I
organized my life.
Same year?
I don't know. No idea.
I want it to be now.
Well, okay.
Okay.
Well, anyways, there's lots of crisscrossing currents between the general leftist political movements and what's going on in regards to Christian hierarchy in this book. Lots of sort of similar themes, especially in regards to horizontalism and decision making and democracy and liberation and all those kinds of really good words I like saying. But before we even get as far as that kind of stuff, maybe we can just start from a really basic place. So the basic place we can start with is what is a church, and why is hierarchy so tied up in the idea of church? What do you think, Zach, as a divinity man and sometimes pastor man? What do you think about those questions?
So the question of, is this, you want to know Boff's opinion or my own?
I mean, both.
An aside.
Yeah, I mean, I think both. I think it's good to get both of those things going. I mean, just generally, what is church and why is hierarchy associated with it?
Yeah.
Those are opinions of yours that I want.
Okay, well, I'll start with Boff, just so I don't forget. But for Boff, the church is the Catholic Church, but it's not limited to what he calls the visible church. The church, he says, is there's a greater church than the church that we see, which is a good starting point for any ecclesiology, I think. But when it gets down into the nitty-gritty of what the visible church is, which is the question that Leonardo Boff is more concerned with, is the church as a sacramental presence of unity. And so it's sacramental in the sense that it, in its particularities, in its congregations and parochial instances, are, in a sense, the church holy, but they're not, in any sense, the whole church. And so, in this way, different little instantiations of the church exceed themselves in meaning. And while that's not something that I disagree with, I would like to push Boff further, or just any ecclesiology further, into a strong recognition of the invisible church. I shouldn't say invisible, that's kind of a loaded term, but what we mean when we say church beyond the visible church.
So the church is a place where you go and you get the sacraments, all that good sacrament stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also some other things too.
Yeah, and so...
Could you say, more concretely what the other things are, besides the sacraments?
So for Boff, and I think I would agree with this, the church is a visible sign of the kingdom that is coming. It's a group of people who attempt, at the very least, to comport their lives according to how they understand the vision of the kingdom of God.
So Bible studies, small group meetings.
Yeah, well, these
church summer camp.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes. Is there I'm sure there are Catholic summer camps.
Yeah, I would guess.
We'll fact check that with Dean.
I mean, why wouldn't there be?
I don't know.
There's an everything summer camp.
I bet you're right.
I know I'm right. Okay, so amongst summer camps, small group meetings, potlucks, there are actually things, though, like the sacraments, like getting Eucharist or whatever, whatever them Catholics are up to. And attached to the sort of sacramental practices, there's also a church hierarchy. So are sacraments and hierarchy connected?
They very much are for the Catholic Church. Maybe a lot of your listeners may know. I imagine, given the content of your past podcasts, most of them are Catholic, and everyone else kind of left. The Catholic Church traces its authority to preside over the sacraments at all to the institution of the Church by Christ in the person of Peter, the rock of the Church. So, in this sense, the authority to preside over sacraments is written into the very understanding of the Church as like a body at all.
Yeah, that sounds like what I remember from my church history class when I was in college. Yeah, right. There's Dwayne the Rock Johnson, who's keeping the hierarchy of the church, and
That's correct.
That's right. And Hulk Hogan's on the outside; he can't come in.
That's right. No Hulkamaniacs allowed. He's one of the ones who's cast into the outer dark.
There's gnashing of teeth.
Yeah,
it's just.
I mean, he's ripping his clothes. That's the whole thing.
Oh my god!
He's enacting a prophetic. It's a prophetic reenactment of enactment.
Yeah.
Of the eschaton.
That's wrestling.
Yeah.
All right, man. Hey, sounds good. Well, but. I mean, like, okay. But so there's a hierarchy connected to the sacraments because the church is sort of like in charge of them, right?
Yeah.
And the hierarchy is there to like it's sort of like an exclusionary function. Does that sound right? Like you got to keep some people out and some people in.
So that is a way that it functions. That's so hierarchies, the way that they're generally used in organizations, is a way of defining who has authority and who does not, who is allowed to, in this instance, preside over the sacraments and who is not, who is allowed to partake of the sacraments and who is not. These are all decisions made hierarchically with a head or heads of institutions or bodies making these sort of universal decisions generally without recourse to certain particularities or contextual realities. Liberation theology, which started as a primarily Catholic movement in Latin America, was pushing against this particular way of looking at hierarchies. And so they found themselves, the early liberationists like Gustavo Gutierrez and Leonardo Boff, among others, found themselves hard-pressed to critique a kind of cosmology that was put forward by Jacques Maritain, who is a French Catholic theologian whose theology was very influential in the Catholic Church, understanding itself as one sphere or representing one sort of cosmic sphere, and the worldly leaders representing another worldly sphere. And so they, taking their cues from this sort of dual cosmology, they ceded their worldly authority to worldly leaders, presidents, leaders of nations, and contented themselves to have authority exclusively on the spiritual lives of their members. This had catastrophic consequences in Latin America, where governments, particularly ones backed by the United States, enacted horrible policies. Chile was particularly bad under Pinochet. William Kavanaugh, who is Catholic, wrote about this connection in Torture and Eucharist, where he talks about the damage that Maritain's theology had on the Catholic Church's relationship to the people who were oppressed and terrorized by their own government in Chile. And so what Boff is doing, which is an interesting and characteristic liberationist turn, is imagining hierarchy as connected to and very much in service of the local communities, or what he calls the base communities.
Cool, that's a good segue into what Boff is all about. and laying out sort of like the actual issues that play at hierarchy, I think is helpful so we can like actually understand more of the book. So maybe you could just so the book is called Ecclesiogenesis. Maybe you could kind of give us an overview of like what Boff's actually talking about.
Yeah, so I mean, apart from having like a super cool name, Ecclesiogenesis is in large part a response to kind of a historical crisis in the Catholic Church in Latin America, and this is a crisis that is actually occurring in at least the United States as well.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But not as drastically.
Yeah.
The crisis is a priest shortage. So he says one stat he gives is that at one point there were 1.8 priests to every 10,000 of the faithful, which is just a bonkers ratio there. And so in a church that is organized hierarchically and which distributes the sacraments through the authority given in the sacrament of orders, which is the very Catholic way of saying that they're ordained. That's the language he uses, at least, of being given the sacrament of orders. There's like a real problem in the parishioners' access to the sacraments, where kind of like the old circuit riders in the United States in like the 1800s, some people will only partake of Mass once or twice a year at most, which is a real problem for Catholics.
Right. So, that makes sense. There's not enough ordained priests to give out the sacraments, to give Eucharist, to do confession, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, so confession, baptism, marriages, and just generally being brought up in the church becomes kind of a challenge. And so in this sort of vacuum of authority arose these grassroots organizations that Boff refers to as base communities. And so these base communities are just like small units that are affiliated with the Catholic Church. They are, at least as I understand it, they are baptized Catholics who have organized these communities specifically for the purpose of continuing to engage in the life of faith as best they know how. They have de facto leaders, and they operate a lot like churches do, but just there's no ordained leadership, which is a bit of a sacramental crisis.
Right, that makes sense. So the basic community is there sort of like a stopgap, right? It's just like it's doing all the things that lay people can do, without, it does all the church stuff without doing any of the sacramental magic.
Right.
So it's just like going to like a Baptist church, but probably better.
Well, maybe.
I mean, like, think about how many times those dang Baptists out there have taken Eucharist. Once.
Do they only do it once?
Like once a quarter.
Oh, no way.
Oh, dude, that's like all Protestants.
Oh.
Except
I grew up doing it once a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We did. So I grew up in a Nazarene church, and we did it once a quarter. So.
Man, so you were like starving.
Yeah.
By the time like the quarter came around.
Yeah.
How did you like? Was it like a spring, summer, winter, fall type like?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, and even like more messed up than that too. It was only at like the evening church, like not even during regular church.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. One time. So the church I go to now, we do it all the time. All the Hawaiian bread and Welch's grape juice you can eat, every day. But sometimes when I tell Protestant friends or family about that, they're like, "Oh, doesn't that ruin it for you? Like getting it every single day?" It's like, no.
Yeah.
No, actually, it's awesome.
See, these are people who've bought into the scarcity economy that capitalism demands.
Oh man, that's a good thing. I mean, that's a good insight. That's not a good thing they do that. I'm just saying, like, it's probably true.
Well, I mean, we think that, like, generally, like, by we and generally, I mean Americans or Westerners in capitalist nations, like, we ascribe value to things that are more scarce. And so if communion is plentiful, then it's not as valuable.
Yeah.
And that's I've worked in a couple of Methodist churches, and I grew up in a Methodist church, and that's very much the attitude around communion, is that if we do it too much, then it's not going to be special anymore.
Right. But let me just be the first in this conversation to say that is dumb as hell. That's like such a stupid opinion.
Yeah, it's not like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because there are other things that we do every week in church, like, say, the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
And this is what I would always tell parishioners who would say, like, well, I don't want to do communion every week because then it's not going to feel special anymore. But I mean, we sing similar hymns, but we sing the same doxology most weeks, and the Lord's Prayer. And while these things can come to like feel rote, a lot of times that's just like the precursor to experiencing the abundance of meaning present in these gifts from God.
But like, listen, I go to the dentist like maybe once a year, if I'm lucky, and it's never special.
Yeah,
I do it seldomly.
You would want to do it even less.
Yeah, that's right. It's dumb.
Yeah,
dumb thing.
Well, some people treat communion like the dentist.
Yeah,
so people will leave church before they even, because it makes church go longer. So they're gonna like miss the football game or something. So no, they will live. That's
peak
leave.
Protestant logic.
They will leave before service is over, so they can miss communion, so they don't stay 10 minutes longer.
But I mean, like, communion's like the best part.
I agree. I mean, they're probably thinking that they just want to like beat the Baptists to like
the Golden Corral,
the brunch. Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
That's where the real Eucharist is.
Yeah,
you got to dip your donut in the chocolate fountain. I assume that's what they have there.
Do they do that?
I saw a commercial once
with donuts and chocolate fountains.
I don't know. I've been to a Golden Corral exactly one time, and they did have a chocolate fountain and a cotton candy machine.
What?
It's like disgusting. It's not even food.
It's like, I mean, it's sugar. Sugar's food.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I mean, but like, it's gross though. Like, it's like, that's like carnival food. Like, oh yeah, we also have funnel cake over here and fried Snickers bar.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There's a Golden Corral like 20 minutes from here. You want to go?
No. No, I don't.
Me either.
Yikes. So church hierarchy is really important to think about.
Church hierarchy.
Okay, but the lack of ordained people, I'm sorry, the lack of ordained men,
yeah,
makes
that's a very important distinction for Catholics.
Yeah, makes doing the church thing kind of difficult. But Boff's point is that, like, hey, there's actually other church stuff we can do, and maybe we should rethink like that basic communities actually do something for the church. Is that kind of right?
Yeah. So he does say that, but he takes it further. So first, he says that the base communities are, well, I mean, the subtitle of the book is "The Base Communities Reinvent the Church," and so clearly he thinks that these smaller communities have something very important to say to the larger church. But he also thinks that there's cause to think of these communities themselves as sacramental instantiations of the church, and that lay people can, in fact, preside over the sacraments.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's cool, at least. But that ruffles some feathers in the Catholic hierarchy at large, though, huh?
Yeah, they generally are opposed to that sort of thing. Yeah, so the Catholic Church holds apostolic succession very highly, as do a lot of denominations, in terms of how they define the authority of presidents over a sacrament. And what apostolic succession is the understanding that one's authority comes straight from Christ. There's like a direct line of like authority from Jesus ordaining Peter to be the rock of the church, Peter ordaining other people whose names that maybe I should know, having read the Bible in my time, but I don't. And on
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
The Undertaker was one of them, I believe.
Who can forget the great martyr Randy Orton,
Hacksaw Jim Duggan. That's a WrestleMan.
Yeah, $1 Million Man, who became an evangelical Christian himself.
Yeah.
I read his autobiography. My youth minister gave it to me.
That's us.
When I was,
that's a good youth minister, honestly.
Yeah.
Sting. He's a wrestler.
He's obviously been ordained by the Apostle Peter.
Making that joke work.
Yeah.
Hey, all the apostles are wrestlers now.
Yeah, we could get. Just gonna try and come up with like a pun.
No.
But I got nothing.
Yeah,
I couldn't think of enough wrestlers' names. I was thinking like something with Cain, the wrestler, and Cain, the brother of Abel.
Man, you were really grasping.
I was, yeah.
Are there any Bible-themed wrestlers other than Cain?
I mean, Jacob wrestled God at the Jabbok.
Well, yeah, but that's not... He wasn't in WWE.
You don't know.
That's true.
That's
the next season of Supernatural.
Oh my god. Yes, it is. That seems like the trajectory that this show's been going.
Yeah, man. One of the writers has been waiting in the wings with that for like 3 seasons. Oh gosh. So Apostolic Succession, though, that lineage, that lineage makes it like not work. So the hierarchy has to be there, huh?
The hierarchy is the means by which power or authority is granted, someone trains up in the church, takes on the sacrament of orders. They have to like go to seminary and get an education at a Catholic school. And these are all things that are kind of like the makeup of a church with a scarcity of priests and therefore a scarcity of people to train up people. That kind of makes the situation worse, less tenable over time.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Just a lack of personnel.
Yeah.
For like a really intensive situation. Here's a kind of a weird question that I don't know the answer to, and maybe you don't either. Maybe Dean could tell us someday when he's back. I miss Dean so much. Oh my god. We like Skype a ton. He's just like not been around. He's been in Hawaii.
He probably doesn't miss you very much then.
No, not even a little bit. Anyways, so thinking back to like my one church history course I ever took, I remember a little heresy called Donatism, where the church folks, they would want to be rebaptized because their priest may have backslidden or whatever.
Yeah, that's very Wesleyan language of you to use.
Their hearts weren't strangely warmed.
Yeah,
because they were like persecuted and like deconverted because of like the intense situation.
Yeah, so the Donatists were a group of people in the early church around the 300s. I'm not super clear on the exact dates, but the Donatists followed, oddly enough, a fellow named Donatus, and what they taught were that priests who had presided over baptisms or confessions or any other sacrament, if these priests who presided over the sacraments lapsed under persecution, where they would be like brought in front of a tribunal of some kind and made to renounce the name of Christ. And if they did this, they were considered lapsed. The Donatists taught that sacraments presided over by the lapsed priests were not valid. So one's baptism was not valid if your priest was lapsed. And this created like a bit of just an absolute uproar, and a lot of like paranoia over whether or not one's baptism was ever valid. So people would get baptized by priests like multiple times, just hoping that one was actually valid, because you never knew if the sacrament was valid because your priest could lapse in the future.
Right. Well, the reason I bring that up though is because the resolution of that situation was that like in receiving a sacrament, it's like God doing the work, not the priest.
Yeah.
So why is it important that the priest like presides over the Eucharist rather than the laity?
So I don't really know.
No, yeah.
This was Augustine's argument against the Donatists, apart from advocating that they be tortured until they were in line with orthodoxy.
Yeah.
He said that the Donatists were very silly people because...
But tortured though, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hey, I mean, like, gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. Actually, I think that's really bad, but I don't know. Different time. Augustine, I guess, knew what he was doing.
Nah, he didn't.
Yeah, well.
But what he did know...
I'm just, like, not a fan of torture, but I don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff, man.
I just like to make snide comments about it and then not let it, like, affect my theology.
Yeah.
Maybe that's bad.
Probably.
Nah.
I don't know. It's a dark history there.
But Augustine's refutation of the Donatists was basically saying, like, hey, it's not the priest or even the holiness of the person receiving the sacrament that really matters for the sacrament. It is God's action through and through. And so with this logic, he refuted the Donatists by saying, like, well, the baptism of even a lapsed priest is of course valid because it's not the holiness of the priest that matters, it's the holiness of God. What I don't understand, and hopefully Dean can clarify, you'll have to do an episode where Dean just like cleans up the mess that we made.
Yeah. I hope John Heaps is listening to this one. He'll be very upset.
Oh yeah, we'll get like angry tweets later. So what I don't understand, as somebody with a master's degree in theology, is why ordination matters for the presiding over sacraments.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
The Catholic Church does recognize the authority of lay people to preside over sacraments in times of dire need. So if somebody's like gonna die, and like an ordained priest can't get there, a layperson can baptize or administer the last rites, as I understand it. But what Augustine's like argument means for me is that like the sacraments are just God doing stuff, and if my holiness as somebody who from time to time presides over the sacraments doesn't mean a whole lot to the efficacy of the grace effected, and neither does the holiness of the person partaking of the sacrament.
Yeah.
It's not really clear to me why like you can't preside over the sacraments.
Right.
But that's oddly enough, that's not anything Boff even touches in his book.
Yeah.
And he doesn't mention the Donatists at all.
It's actually like not only a Catholic thing either, though. I was about to make like sort of like a stupid pithy comment about like, hey, it's awesome. I don't have to care about this because I'm a Protestant. But actually, one time when I was sexting at St. Paul's, sorry listeners, this is a story you probably don't understand. I worked at a church. I was basically the janitor. With a fun title. Anyways, I did morning prayer one morning, and none of the clergy were there. So like, I don't know, like just gonna do it because like why not?
Yeah.
I'm the janitor. It seems like I'm a good person to do it.
And you, being fully appraised of Augustine's refutation of the Donatists, knew it was within your power.
And plus,
to affect the grace of God.
Plus, the pastor said like, "Hey, I'm not gonna. If I'm not here, you can just do it."
See, in the Free Methodist Church, I'm pretty sure that counts.
Well, yeah, but here's the funny thing, though, is that, like, they said, like, you can go ahead and do it if I'm not here, and it was fine. But then, like, the superintendent showed up. And then, after I got through, like, the beginning part of the liturgy kind of stuff, she was like, hey, I'm just gonna do the communion part.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the part I want to do.
Yeah.
That's the only good magic stuff I can do, and, like, you're not gonna let me do it.
It's quite a rush presiding over the sacraments.
It's great. It's a great rush of adrenaline.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like Indiana Jones sort of it's face like, melting kind of situation.
I was gonna say it's like that where he's like taking the golden statue off and replacing it with
with Hawaiian bread.
Yeah, it's like taking the body of Jesus.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm no longer allowed, but like in the Free Methodist Church, which is like pretty low church Protestant denomination, not like, at least on the books, not very like strict in their hierarchical organization.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to go to seminary.
No, you don't. I did, but most people don't.
You just take a class.
You take a few classes.
Okay.
They do like a winter term type thing in Indianapolis.
Oh.
But I was like pretty far along, and like I was allowed to preside over the sacraments at the invitation of an ordained elder.
That's right. Yeah. Well,
So.
What's interesting in all of that is that, like, to me it seems like to me it seems unnecessary, first of all, but like there's probably a good reason for it that I just don't understand. But there's a real exclusivity in it. There's a real like hierarchical order to it, and sort of like an elitist kind of situation is the feeling I get. Anyways, Boff has something way different in mind, where things are way more horizontal. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, so he imagines the organizations of the base communities as having a much more prominent position in the makeup of the church proper than they were given at the time that he wrote this. I'm not really sure. Maybe Dean can clear this up. Like how much influence this
this book has had.
So Boff imagines the church in a kind of interesting response to Jacques Maritain like dual cosmology, where there's like the spiritual sphere and the worldly sphere. He imagines two realms of authority within the church. One is societal and the other communal. But these two spheres are never like considered without the other. So he's using what's probably a pretty old and maybe dated sociological terminology here. Society versus community. I don't know. Maybe any sociologists listening can tell us that this is dumb now or something.
Set us straight on that.
Yeah. So the society and the community are these two different spheres in this account, where a community, he says, is a social formation in which human beings are oriented by a sense of reciprocity and belonging. And he imagined this as a kind of microcosm, whereas a society, by contrast, is a social formation in which anonymity and indirect relationships prevail. So the societal is wider view of the kind of hierarchical makeup of the institution. It's institutional unity across geographic space, and the communities are more tight-knit. They derive a lot of their meaning from the needs and desires of their particular community.
Yeah, Boff describes this in like a really nice way, or a way that I really like. I don't know how nice it is for the rest of y'all, but I like it. So Boff says this is like in the 4th page of the book, so it's good. He says, Christian life in the basic communities is characterized by the absence of alienating structures, by direct relationships, by reciprocity, by a deep communion, by mutual assistance, by communality of gospel ideals, by equality among members. So you get that sort of feeling of what the community looks like for him. Definitely different than I think most churches look like in general. I mean, just like anywhere.
Yeah.
But like a good articulation of what churches should be like, I guess. Maybe that's a good segue to switch gears and talk more about the radical elements of the book. I think like the radical stuff is sort of scattered throughout, but it starts getting really interesting by the 4th chapter or so.
So the 4th chapter begins by offering a kind of historical account of some various conferences which lay people attended within the Catholic Church in Latin America, and it's the lay people primarily who come to the unanimous decision that there were. So I'll just read this quote here. On 2 points, opinion was unanimous. First, the main root of this oppression is the elitist, exclusive, capitalist system. And 2, people resist and are liberated to the extent that they unite and create a network of popular movements. And so these are the conclusions come to by the lay people. And so what Boff is advocating is that the Catholic Church recognize this and either do something about it or help the local networks do something about it.
Yeah, that's also, like, kind of parenthetically, what I really like about this book too is that it's not just Boff sort of theologizing out of thin air, just saying things that he likes to say. These are like observations sort of based in. These are theological principles that he's kind of taking out of observations about lay people. Something I really like, and something that is, I think, an inherently leftist idea, is that, like, normal people are actually smart and, like, want what is good for them. Like, kind of a wild idea in our sort of political economy, but
yeah, it doesn't seem that most people think that.
No, most people think that regular people are very dumb, and that's not good. Actually, they're not.
Yeah, I think people generally know stuff.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to, like, their material reality, right? Like, people know that, like, I mean, you can be deceived by ideology and all kinds of things, but, like, I don't know. People aren't stupid. That's all I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so Boff definitely supports this more horizontal structure that recognizes that there's, like, something good about community. There's something not always very desirable about hierarchy. Here's my question, Zach, that I think is, I mean, I don't know how we'd even answer this, but we'll give it a shot. So do you think that Boff thinks that horizontalism is good in and of itself, or is horizontalism sort of like is it just something good that they have to work with? Like, the shortage of clergy make horizontalism necessary, or do you think that he thinks that horizontalism is actually good?
I think he thinks that it's actually good in itself. I mean, it might be that it's only something that he could recognize as good because of his contextual location as a Latin American Catholic in this historical time. But he still wants to maintain, so while he seems to definitely appreciate the horizontalism or a kind of flattened hierarchy within the local parish, he's still he has a lot of good things to say and think about the idea of a hierarchy more generally.
Right. He doesn't go that far to like, abolish hierarchy in general, but he definitely has a different take on it than I think others might.
Yeah. So hierarchy is, for him, it should always be subservient to the needs and the desires of the local churches or the base communities. These are the things that the hierarchy is for, and the logic he uses to get there is the Vatican II language about ordination and how priests are always ordained to a congregation. So priests can't just be ordained; they have to be ordained and attached to a kind of community. And Boff uses this logic to say that, well, the hierarchy then always exists for the local communities. If it becomes detached from the needs of the base communities or obscures what is actually good for them for the purposes of its own authority, then it has failed in its duty.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a pretty cool insight. A few weeks ago, when Dean and I were talking to Derek Ford again, we talked a little bit about party structure, and Derek said something that was, I mean, smart. He said he was talking about like Leninist organizations and democratic centralism, and he was saying like democratic centralism is good because it works, and like in like terms of like, I don't know, it works in like the material conditions, and I think that Boff is saying something kind of similar, but a little bit more geared towards the community. Like, hierarchy is only good insofar as it serves the community, insofar as it serves like the actual like good of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also serves a unifying function for at least for Christian church, for him at least. It's what marks the visible community of Christ in the world that spans, the world.
Yeah, so you mean unity insofar as like the unity of like church structure or something, or what is that? What do you mean by unity in that sense?
So for Boff, the unity of the church is defined in a couple of different ways. The first is a kind of ideological commonality where he understands that the base communities are only church insofar as they are driven by explicitly Christian motivations. But there's also the sense of the relationship between the universal and the particular. And I'll read a quote here. It's on page 16 if you want to follow along in your hymnals. The universality of the church resides in the universality of God's salvific offer. But this salvific mystery is manifested in space and time, and in being revealed, it takes on the particularities of ages and places. So, unity is this universal found in the particular. And he has this very strong sense of the priests, those who are ordained to congregations, being charged with the ministry of unity. And their job is not to manifest or manufacture unity, but rather discover it. Discover the providence of God in the communities to which they are ordained. So I'm really interested in the ways that we define unity hierarchically. And I was hoping for a stronger critique of this from Boff. And while I find his sort of displacement of the primacy of hierarchy very interesting and compelling, what I'm interested in, at least in my own work, is the displacement of hierarchy altogether in terms of how it constitutes the unity of the church.
Yeah, I mean that was the paper that you had, right? It was about displacing hierarchy at large, right? That was the point. That was what made the pastor so upset.
Well, yeah, that was sort of what I was hinting at towards the end of that paper, and
I think the strongest part of that paper, no one else has read it or heard it but me.
That's good.
Dean was there.
He was there, so he'll know.
He'll know. He'll appreciate this conversation. Him alone.
Yeah, I mean, if we can wherever 2 or 3 are gathered.
What was good, especially good too, though, was that you were replacing hierarchy with specifically like non-Western relations.
Yeah, so a helpful angle that I've found for thinking about the identity of the church itself is thinking about. I mean, this is a very biblical view, if I don't say so myself, of the sort of Pauline vision of the church as the body of Christ, and recognizing the body of Christ as kind of enigmatic and unplaceable, and also undetectable. So the sort of scripture that I was meditating on the most in my paper was about there's the separating of the sheep from the goats, where Jesus's followers are all like really super surprised that they encountered him at all. When he says, "Oh, hey, any time that you gave somebody water or food or cloak, that was me, and every time that you didn't, that was also me. So you screwed up." All he's talking to his followers there, and all these people who, in like ecclesiological definitions, would have been like, these are the people who are following Jesus, failed to recognize the body of Christ. And so I think it seems pretty clear to me that the body of Christ is porous and dynamic.
Right. I mean, it's like a weird thing, though, where like non-Christians end up being like actually very important to the story of like who Jesus is.
Yeah.
That's wild, right? Like no one thinks about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like Jesus is these people.
Yeah. On that point, here's a fun segue. This is a quote I like from the book that I think maybe does a little bit with what we're just talking about here. This is a quote on page 38 in case anyone really cares. What page is on? Boff is talking about like the importance of pursuing social justice in the church. Okay, so Boff says, in order to achieve this social justice so wanting in today's discriminatory society, one must live the faith as a factor of transformation of social relationships. Christians in the Brazilian reality who oppose qualitative changes in society are not just conservative citizens. They are disloyal to the gospel, since they are being deaf to the cry of the oppressed that rises up on all sides. So the connection there seems pretty clear to me, that there's like there's a real like it's more than just a preferential option for the poor. It's that like Jesus does stuff with the poor that we should pay attention to, and that if you don't, you're being disloyal to the call of the gospel. But framing it in the way that you do is really interesting, because it does introduce a type of, I don't know if it really gets rid of hierarchy, but it definitely like introduces a whole lot of people that you just wouldn't ever think about, and about like how these people that you wouldn't think about are actually very important to Christian life.
Yeah, so I'm sort of taking my cue in that like interpretive leap from Matthew 25 from Ada Maria Isasi Diaz, who's a Mujerista theologian from the United States who died in somewhere around 2008, I think. And Mujerista theology is a branch of liberationist theology that takes as its primary authority the life and the experiences of Hispanic women. And so its primary method is basically saying like whatever is not liberative to Hispanic women is therefore not the gospel. And seeing the particular oppression of Hispanic women in the United States, Isasi Diaz identifies this persecuted Christ with these Hispanic women. And I sort of took some liberties with this interpretive move to try and define an ecclesiology that was inclusive of people who maybe aren't Christian, and how we can maybe understand the church as a body with parts that it cannot apprehend.
Who do you think the Martin Luther of wrestlers is?
Mankind.
Whoa!
It's got to be.
Why? Why do you say that?
There's no more iconoclastic wrestler.
Yeah, that's true.
It's got to be Mankind. And and
he's sort of like two-faced too, you know.
Could Sacco be John Calvin? Maybe. No. It would be Philip Melanchthon. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
All the Reformed people will probably get that. Or maybe I just totally screwed it up because I'm not Reformed, so.
They're all, you can't hear them, but they're laughing right now.
Yeah, good. I hope so. That'll make me feel really good. Who do you think is the Pope of wrestling?
Vince McMahon.
Oh, yeah, that was kind of a dumb question.
Yeah, yes. Is he even still is he part of the game?
I don't know.
Did he pass on?
No, he's still alive, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, if he had died, we would have heard like Trump tweet about it or something.
That's true. Vince McMahon, I think in Trump's eyes, is probably because Trump beat him in a wrestling tournament.
Yeah, he really made him a cuck or whatever.
I don't know. I'm honestly not very familiar with that mythology there.
The wrestling mythology or the...
Well, I just don't know in what facet Donald Trump beat Vince McMahon.
Me either.
But there is that gif of him shaving Vince McMahon's head, I believe.
Yeah, and also hitting him with a chair, right? Or is that a different...
Oh, I think that's what happened, yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, that's it for the Magnificast this week. Thanks, Zach, for being here with all your church history knowledges and really great takes on wrestling, I guess. If you hated these last two episodes, you'll be glad to know that Dean will be back next week, and we've got some cool stuff coming up. Again, sign up for the Verlio reading group. That's happening. It's coming up. All right, thanks for listening.
I don't want to wanna get up for church in the morning, souls alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside. There we'll swim with all creation. Never get tired, never bored. Don't worry, someday there'll be no dam between us and our Lord. Jackson, keep your hoods up. Keep your hoods up and you stay up late. In Jackson, you keep your hoods up. Well, you keep your hoods up and you stay up late. Oh, don't mind a cold night, but we might mind if you leave too soon. So come on now, it's still early. Beside what else are you gonna do? As we kissed in the alley by the Michigan theater, fall snow was glowing in the lights of the downtown. Saw a spark in your eyes, I just spoke it. Said we're gonna turn this whole place upside down. Then you said, my dear, do you really mean this? I said, I only know what I feel right now. I said, poets lie, sometime come true. Stay awake with me, well, see what we can do. Poets lie, sometime come true. Stay awake with me, well, see what we can do in my town. I don't wanna get up for church in the morning, souls alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside. There we'll swim with all creation. Never get tired, never bored. Don't worry, someday there'll be no dam between us and our Lord. Jackson, you keep your hoods up. Well, you keep your hoods up and you stay up late. In Jackson, you keep your hoods up. Well, you keep your hoods up and you stay up late. This the kind of town folks get stuck in. Yeah, people get stuck here, but I chose to stay. If you ever want to know something, or know someplace, you just can't know them all. At some point, you must make a choice and choose someplace and make a home. There was a time not long ago when we look out this window and see a wolf pack running free. Except there'd be no window or this building.